Today's show is about the rise of the NBA from where it was in the 1970s, not such a great product, to when it caught fire and took off, baby.
Fantastic! Here it comes for Sloopy on the run. He's got Paxson the beast. Oh!
You gotta love it. NBA action, it's fantastic.
3, 2, 1. Broadcasting tape delayed from the Plaza Hotel in New York City, where the 1979 NBA Draft was held. I'm Bill, this is JP, and we're here to pump you up. Today's show is about the rise of the NBA from where it was in the 1970s, not such a great product, to when it caught fire and took off, baby. So here we go. You ready, JP? Got a couple questions and we're going to start this show.
Yep.
All right. 1979. Who played in the NCAA championship game?
It was one Magic Johnson and a guy that a lot of people may have heard of named Larry Bird.
That's right. I love those little powder blue uniforms they wore too for Indiana State.
With the shorty shorts.
With the shorty shorts, that's right.
Ball hugging shorts. Yeah, man.
Oh man, what a deal, what a deal. So anyway, so those two players came into the NBA in the 1979 draft. Correct?
That's right.
And that's when the NBA changed for what we know it as now.
Right. I mean, real quick, Larry Bird was drafted in 1978. His first year is Magic Johnson.
That's a whole different weird story about rules and others.
Red Auerbach. We're not gonna get it.
We're not getting into that. Just look it up on the internet, folks. All right. And the next guy, the third piece to the puzzle that mattered a whole lot, which I want to be discussing, I'm going to take this part of the topic. Yeah. David Stern became the NBA commissioner in 1984, February 1st, 1984. So you got these three pieces. You got Larry, Magic, and David Stern. And then you started adding a bunch of other stars that added to it.
Right.
And then you get what we got today, a $76 billion TV contract. There you go. All right, so start us out there, JP, with the 1979 draft. You okay? Are those the two biggest stars?
Well, I mean, most people, it's just like Eddie Murphy. A lot of people say Eddie Murphy saved SNL back in the day. SNL was about to go off the air, and Eddie Murphy came in there in 1980 and saved SNL. And then there's, damn, 50 years later, they're still on TV, right? So the NBA was in a bad place. Look, I'll say it, because I am African American. I mean, a lot of it was because, at that time, in the 70s, you had the ABA and the NBA. ABA was coming to an end. A lot of those players, the best players from the ABA, came to the NBA, right? So if you take a lot of those good players from the ABA, a majority of them were African American. You blend them with the NBA, and now you basically have a league that is like 80% African American, maybe even more, right? And the stars were mostly African American. So you really, the people who had the money really did not want to spend their money and watch guys that they weren't familiar with and weren't winning, right? They didn't look like them, right? So they did have a racial component to it, and that's one of the reasons why the league struggled. But they were in a bad place. We'll mention what happened in the 80 finals, but they were really in a bad place. And here comes Magic Johnson and Larry Bird in the college basketball championship game. It's one of the most watched sporting events of all time. And then both of them are going to the NBA the following year. And then it was just like a rocket ship taking off.
Yeah, I want to mention two things about the 1970s NBA. UCLA and Indiana basketball were more popular than the NBA.
No doubt.
Now,
No doubt.
second, this is a personal story. My uncle drove a city bus in Chicago. When teams came to town every once in a while, this wasn't all the time, he would get assigned to pick up the players from the airport and drive them back on a city bus. That's where the NBA was in the 70s and the early 80s.
I wonder if they were still making the stops. Were other people on the bus?
I know he never mentioned that. He just told me that he picked them up and dropped them off, and he was just astounded at how tall they were. I don't know if he was making the stops or not.
He's my stop. Pushing the bell.
That's funny. That is funny. All right. So anyway, all right. So in 1980, we'll talk about this. David Stern was named Executive Vice President of the NBA. During his time as the EVP is what they call it here, Stern helped develop a drug testing program and a salary cap system, which helped turn the owners and players association into a symbiotic business relationship. And we still have this relationship now, collective bargaining. They still have that. So, and the players are rewarded really well. So the players can't complain anything at all about this, although I'm sure they would. So,
nobody's ever going to be happy when it comes to
it's hard. It's hard living on $36 million a year. It's hard. Right.
You have guys that get those big contracts, and then 2 years later they're like, I'm underpaid. I don't know how I can live. With, I can't live with this contract. It's like I'm barely making it.
That's right.
$40 million a year. I'm struggling here.
All right. So moving on. 1981.
Yes.
Okay. In the 1979-80, who played in the 1979-80 season NBA Finals? Tape delayed, by the way. That's why we talk about it.
Right. So 1980, summer of 1980, the Lakers played the 76ers. Magic Johnson led the team to the championship. He had one of the greatest performances ever, won the Finals MVP. He played center, which he was normally play a guard, and he had like 42 points and like double-digit rebounds and double-digit assists. It's one of the greatest performances ever, and he won the championship that year.
All right. So that was 79-80 season. Mm-hmm. Tape delayed.
Yes,
still
tape delayed. 11:30 Eastern time.
So, folks, that's why I always start the show out with tape delayed, because it's the way it is.
That's how bad the NBA was.
Yes, that's how bad it was. Because the games were on CBS, and CBS primetime was during sweeps, which is May, and they felt that their shows would get better ratings than the NBA. So, all right. We move on. We're moving on to 1980s, the 80-81 season.
Yes.
Right? So who were the top draft picks in the 80? I guess that would be the 1980 draft. 80 draft.
Yeah, well, so I'm not going to mention all the top ones because
just the
good players, even some of the good players. So like
some that we remember.
Draft, you have players like Buck Williams, who was really good, and Mark Aguirre, who basically was who was the final piece to get the Detroit Pistons over the top in the late 80s. But it was Isaiah Thomas who's the best player in that draft. He came out of Indiana. They had just won the championship. And, he was clearly the best player. As soon as he got in the league, he was the best player on his team, and he just completely dominated once he hit the court in the NBA.
All right. So that was the 1980 draft. Who won the championship in the 80? I guess that would be the 80-81 season championship.
It was Boston Celtics. Larry Bird. They actually, in the playoffs, they had a 7-game series against the Sixers and ended up coming back They were behind 3-1, came back 1-7, and then they played. Everybody was anticipating they were going to play the Lakers, and the Lakers got upset by Houston, and with Moses Malone, and the Celtics completely dominated them. It was one of the worst NBA finals until they met again in like '86. The same two teams, and it was also one of the worst finals ever.
One of the worst finals ever.
Yes.
Up until this year, because everybody thinks that Oklahoma City is going to win in 4, but who knows? We shall see.
That's what they always say. That's what they
always say. All right, so that was the 80-81 season, which also was tape delayed.
Also tape delayed.
Because the NBA.
Nobody wanted to watch.
Yeah, because the NBA is still working on getting there. Because David Stern's working on some of these deals. He's not the commissioner yet. Yeah. All right, so now we move on to the 81-82 season.
Right. So 82 draft. The biggest name that was drafted was James Worthy, and that was a big thing because the Lakers finagled some trades to somehow get James Worthy, a top pick, and they used it for James Worthy, and that also propelled them to be, for their 80s dynasty, right? But the other key player that was drafted that year was Dominic Wilkins for the Hawks. He completely changed the Hawks, and like we're going to talk about the TV deal. But before the national TV deal, the Atlanta Hawks used to come on TV on a regular, right? Because they were in Atlanta. And Dominic Wilkins became someone, just like in baseball, Dale Murphy became a household name because they were Atlanta teams. So Dominic Wilkins was the other one. It was good. Yeah.
Now, let me mention something about Dominic Wilkins because I'm an SEC basketball fan, which he played for Georgia.
Yeah.
This is the communist organization, also known as the NCAA. You had to declare hardship in order for them to let you out of college.
Right.
You had to fill out paperwork that said, I want to declare hardship. What is that? Right. Anybody else can just drop out of college anytime they want. Not if you play sports in college.
A lot's changed, hasn't it?
A lot has changed. I'm telling you, they used to rule players with an iron fist, man. So when I first heard about it, I was like, that's just crazy. Moses Malone had to do the same thing. Declare a hardship. He didn't even go to college. He didn't even go to college, and he had to declare hardship to get into the NBA. Yeah. So anyway. So Dominic,
So, okay, I was going to say, for the 82 season, the Lakers won a championship. They beat the Sixers. Once again, Magic Johnson was the key figure of the Lakers' victory. And so the Lakers, so now if you're seeing it, if you're, realizing there's a trend happening here. So the first 3 years after the Bird Magic championship game in college, one of those two were in the championship game the following 3 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
So that's helping the league propel itself to another level.
And that championship was not tape delayed.
That one wasn't. That was the first.
That all 7 games were live.
Okay.
Yeah. The first 2 seasons they were tape delayed. Then they realized, hey, we got some stars here. We can put these guys on TV. So this is where it's getting better. All right. So the next season would be the 82-83 season. I guess it would be the 83 draft. Who came out in the 1983 draft?
So famously known for the Ralph Sampson pick, right?
Yeah.
So that was a year, and it's coincides with something that's going to happen later on, which is one of David Stern's big things in a year or two. So in 83, the Pacers and the Houston Rockets had identical records.
Yeah.
And so they decided, in order to see who gets the number one pick, they're going to flip a coin for it. And
Yeah.
so, of course, Indianapolis lost. They drafted a nobody, and the Houston Rockets ended up selecting Ralph Sampson, who was the clear-cut number one choice.
Yeah.
So Ralph Sampson was the big one, and then Clyde Drexler, future Hall
Phi
of Famer.
Slamma Jamma.
That's right, Clyde Drexler. You know, if it wasn't for Jordan, he would probably be he would probably be the greatest shooting guard ever.
Yeah. He went to Portland.
That's right. That's right.
So who won? So the 83, who won the championship in 83?
So in 80, so for the 83, 84 season.
Yeah.
Right. So this is it was the Philadelphia 76ers. It was Dr. J's only ring for the Sixers.
Yeah.
It was when they traded for Moses Malone. You know, that was the 4-4-4 year.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Moses Malone said, well, what do you predict? He's like, 4-4-4. We're going to win
That's
all
right.
2 series, 4-4-4. That's right.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So.
All right. So also February 1st, 1984, everything's about to change for the NBA. David Stern becomes the commissioner of the league, replacing Larry O'Brien.
All right.
Wasn't that great of a commissioner?
So basically, David Stern said, "All right, Larry, hold my drink.
Hold my drink.
I got this. I got it now."
I think he probably wouldn't convince the owners. Like, look, you need to get this Larry guy out. I can straighten this whole place out. Anyway, when he became the commissioner, there were 23 NBA teams.
Only 23.
Only 23. He will work to expand the NBA because he sees the product that they have.
Right.
So anyway, and then the 1984. This is when the season starts. The NBA signs it, or right before the season starts, the NBA signed a 2-year, $20 million broadcast deal with TBS for cable broadcasting rights. So that means the NBA had a game on TBS all the time, except when there was a baseball conflict, which I'm sure baseball was on.
Right,
But baseball season was winding down.
Right.
Well, then you have spring games, whatever. It doesn't matter. However they want. $20 million TV deal. And that was a big
That was
deal.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a lot of
In 1984, that was a lot of money in 1984. So, all right. So the 1984 draft, the 1984-85 season. Who came out of college in 1984?
Right. So, you know, we talk about the greatness of David Stern, but
Yeah.
it was really like the perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
Because
That's what we're talking about. The
Right.
rise and how it all happened.
college basketball was thriving. They had huge ratings for the college basketball Final Fours and championship games, and they had memorable moments where, like, Jim Valvano and Michael Jordan hitting the last second shot to beat Georgetown. So it really was thriving. So the 1984 draft, many people consider to be the greatest draft ever for the NBA. It featured Hakeem Olajuwon as the number one pick, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, and a guy that most people know named Michael Jordan. You know, and what's crazy is Michael Jordan was drafted number 3, sandwiched in between Hakeem Olajuwon and Michael Jordan was who?
Oh, Sam Bowie.
Right. Most
Sam Bowie.
pointed to that he was a higher prospect than Michael Jordan.
Yes.
You know, it's just the injuries literally couldn't stay
Because
healthy.
this was back when the NBA big men ruled the league.
That's right.
Yeah, and this is back when there were positions on the court. Now it's a positionless NBA.
That's right. If you're a 7-footer, you still need to shoot 3-point.
Yeah. If you can't shoot threes, we don't care who you are.
We don't care.
You know, you can look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. If you can hit threes, you're playing. Look like the Tasty Cake bread man delivery guy. We don't care.
Right.
All right. So who won the championship that year? The 1980, I guess it'd be 84, 85 season.
So this is also a part of the perfect storm. After the draft, you know, most of those players, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, Stockton was immediately the best point guard on his team. You know, and of course, Charles Barkley was pretty much the best player, except they had Moses Malone and Dr. J, right?
Yeah.
But you knew he was going to be the future star. So, and then to parlay that, for the finals that year, the Lakers and the Celtics finally meet in the championship game. It goes 7. And of course, just like always, the Celtics win in 7, you know, and it just basically parlays the whole Lakers-Celtics rivalry to another level. And the NBA goes to another.
NBA becomes unstoppable.
Right.
At that point.
Lakers used to say, the NBA action is what?
It's fantastic. Yeah, man, they used to run that promo. It was David Stern was great. He's better than Adam Silverspoon. Anyway. All right, next for David Stern. This is 1985. David Stern. The NBA goes from the coin flip system, in which 2 worst teams of the division flip a coin, which you discussed earlier, to get the number pick, to now they have a lottery. They have a 7 non-playoff team that have an envelope and a hopper. Remember they used to spin that thing around and they pick an envelope on TV.
Live.
Yeah, so it can be rigged, but it's a little harder. Now they just walk out. Here you go.
Yeah, I picked it. Yeah.
Somehow Dallas just won.
Right.
Who knows why they paid more money than everybody else to win this?
Right. They don't even
19. Speaking of that,
they need to prove it to anyone. They just say, okay, here's who won the lottery.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, I think I want Dallas to win this year, so let's make that happen.
All right. So now we move to 1985. Who was the first player that was rigged in the draft?
It was one Patrick Ewing. Literally was probably the most dominant college basketball player since Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, since
Bill Russell
or
Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah, like in college.
Yeah,
like Patrick Ewing, they were in the championship game every year that he played, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, not just, I think they may not have, they made it in 82. Yeah, so Houston was in there in 83, but then 84 and 85, Georgetown was back. So, I mean, they really was just dominant, and, he was the obvious choice. And, of course, many people say that they made the New York Knicks envelope. They put that in the freezer, so he knew which one was the Knicks envelope because they wanted Patrick Ewing to go to the big city. So, David
Stern knew the big city having the best players is where his money was at.
That's right. It did not hurt that Magic was playing in L.A., Larry was playing in Boston, Patrick Ewing was playing in New York, and then Michael Jordan was playing in Chicago. You pretty much had all the major cities covered.
Yeah. Patrick Ewing going to Indianapolis.
No.
Not a good look. Or Cleveland. Not a good look.
But, I don't want to slight, other players. But Patrick Ewing was the top dog. But Karl Malone, who had a better career than Patrick Ewing, and Chris Mullin and Joe Dumars. Selected in that draft as well.
When was Charles Barkley drafted? The 84 draft, 85 draft?
With Jordan in 84.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, who won the championship in the 85-86 season?
So it was the rematch of the Lakers and the Celtics, and then the Lakers finally won in 6 over the Celtics.
Okay. All right. So now,
bringing the rivalry and bringing the NBA to another level.
all right. So now we're going to move to David Stern making more deals in 1986.
And if I could bring one more thing, that 85 finals.
Yeah.
I think every game was in prime time. There were no daytime games. I think that was one of the first times that they made it where all of the games were
in prime time. They didn't have a Saturday or Sunday afternoon game.
Oh, you know what? I think they may have. I think they may have had a Sunday, but everything else, yeah. So I may be incorrect.
It's okay. Mm-hmm. This is YouTube. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
By this point, YouTube nobody's watching anyway.
Yeah.
1986, David Stern's wheeling and dealing again. So the NBA signs a 2-year, $25 million TV deal with TBS for cable broadcasting rights and a 4-year, $173 million deal with CBS Network for its broadcasting. So David Stern has just moved up to a $200 million deal. So that's pretty good.
We realize now, if you compare those numbers to now, it's like chump change. But at that time, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was.
All right. So the
86 draft was one of the worst of all time. So after 84, which many consider to be the best, the 1986 draft was the Len Bias draft, who he probably would have been a Hall of Famer, but of course he died tragically a day after he was drafted, and then the only Hall of Famer from that entire draft was Dennis Rodman, who was not drafted to be a relevant piece to a team who was drafted in the second round, and he, parlayed his career into a bunch of championships with Detroit and Chicago.
Yeah. Worked out pretty good for him.
Yeah.
So 1986, also, David Stern implements a drug testing policy. John Drew is banned permanently from the NBA because of substance abuse. Over the next 9 years, 8 players, Drew, Michael Ray Richardson, Lewis Lloyd, Mitchell Wiggins, Dwayne Washington, Chris Washburn, Roy Tarpley, and Richard Dumas were banned permanently from playing for drug use. Tarpley was reinstated in 1994 and later rebanned for consuming alcohol. I guess he was consuming in the locker room. Like they used to smoke cigarettes at halftime.
Right.
Oh, man. All right. So this would be the 1987 draft that we're up to now, right?
Yeah. 1987 draft. The number one pick was David Robinson. He was clear cut number one. Came out of the Navy. And then Scottie Pippen and Reggie Miller. They were the big ones drafted. Reggie Miller was not drafted to be the star, but he ended up being the star. And of course, Scottie Pippen, nobody even knew who Scottie Pippen was except the Chicago Bulls, and apparently they were right about him.
Yeah.
They had a hunch and he won.
Yeah, he played at Arkansas State? I think it was.
I think it was Arkansas State. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
also, 1987, the Detroit Pistons became the first team to use a charter flight.
Really?
1987. So everybody up till then, they were all flying commercial.
Yeah,
I don't think they were riding a city bus, but
yeah, Pan Am. Yeah,
but they were all flying commercial up until 1987, and Detroit got a charter plane, and everybody else looked at it and it's like, oh, we need one too. Right. Speaking of that, I read that the NBA just signed a big deal with Airbus to have charter flights. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, 1988, the league expands to 25 teams when they added Charlotte and the Miami Heat.
Really? That
So-
was 1988.
Yeah, yeah. So David Stern's moving up. So who was drafted in 1988?
1988, the only one that really matters, and I don't think he became I don't know if he was a Hall of Famer or not, was Danny Manning. Danny
Okay.
Manning in college, he just, and in that year, he, pushed Kansas to the championship. And so I don't know if he was a Hall of Famer, but he was the clear-cut number one player.
Yeah. Who won the NBA championship of the 86-87 season? Was it the Lakers?
So the Celtics won in summer of '86. The Lakers
Okay.
won summer of '87.
All
They
right.
beat the Celtics again. The Celtics were old and broke down.
Yeah,
They were coming to the end of their dynasty, and the Lakers were still on top of theirs.
yeah, yeah. So who won the 1988 NBA championship?
The Lakers repeated. They were the first ones to win back-to-back in a while, and they beat the Pistons. Pistons were up and coming. The Pistons knocked out Boston, and the Lakers beat the Pistons in 1988. The 1987, 88 season, the Lakers won the championship.
Okay. All right, folks. We're going to stop here because this video is going way too long, and you ain't going to watch the end of it anyway. We're going to pick up next time, starting in the 1989 season, and move on through the Jordan heyday years when the NBA becomes white hot, like a star.
Well, under David Stern's leadership.
Y'all come back
All
now.
of the David
Here.
Stern leadership. That's right. So remember, folks, like and subscribe to the channel because we need a gazillion dollars because we want to charter a jet to and fly a WNBA team around. So long, everybody. Anyway.
So long, everybody.